The Supreme Collective had never, in 437 years of interstellar conquest, issued an ultimatum that was not immediately followed by screaming. That was the thing about ultimatums. They worked because the species receiving them had the good, rational sense to look at the warships parked above their cities, count the number of zeros in their population, and then quietly, respectfully begin filling out the surrender forms. It was a system, a beautiful, efficient, time-tested system, and Vorn Hale, Grand Strategist of the 7th Armada, had never once seen it fail. Until now. He stood at the observation deck of the flagship, the unbroken Dominion, staring down at the blue and green marble of the planet called Earth. 47 warships floated behind him in perfect formation, each one larger than most human cities. Their weapons were charged, their shields were active, their crew manifests read like a greatest hits collection of species that had, at various points in history, brought entire civilizations to their knees, and the humans had not responded. Not to the first transmission, not to the second, not to the third, fourth, or fifth, not to the broadcast they had bounced off every satellite still orbiting the planet, not to the low-orbit passes they had done with 3 ships, deliberately and very obviously skimming the upper atmosphere in a way that should have made every radio station on the surface interrupt its programming for an emergency bulletin. Nothing. Day 1 had passed. Then day 2. Then 3. On day 4, Vorn Hale had called his senior staff into the war chamber, fully expecting someone to say something useful. What he got instead was a room full of the galaxy's most decorated military minds staring at each other with the specific expression that said, "I have no idea what is happening and I am hoping someone else does." Now, on day 6, the silence from Earth had stopped feeling like ignorance and started feeling like something else entirely. Something that prickled along the base of Vorn Hale's secondary nerve cluster in a way he did not appreciate. "Run the analysis again," he said, not turning from the window. Behind him, his intelligence officer, Rethkova, tapped the data console with 2 of her 6 fingers and pulled up the same report she had pulled up 14 times in the past 48 hours. "Grand Strategist, the results remain consistent. The humans are aware of our presence. All major governments have been briefed. Their communication networks have been buzzing since hour 3 of day 1. They know." "Then why?" Vorn Hale said very carefully, the way a person speaks when they are trying not to let their voice betray the fact that they are deeply, profoundly unsettled. "Are they not responding?" Rethkova paused for just a moment too long. "We are not entirely certain." Vorn Hale finally turned around. His 4 eyes swept the room. 12 officers from 12 different worlds, each representing species that had built empires, collapsed stars, and charted the death of galaxies. And they were all wearing variations of the same expression he was, the one that said, "We prepared for screaming and we got silence and we are not equipped for this." "Tell me," he said, "what the humans have been doing." Rethkova cleared her throat, which was a gesture she had picked up from humans during preliminary surveillance and had never quite managed to stop doing. "They have been busy. Yes, Grand Strategist. Their military installations have gone to something called DEFCON 1. Their governments have moved key personnel to hardened facilities underground. Their civilian population has been, broadly speaking, informed of the situation through their media networks." She paused again. "There was a period of what we believe was panic purchasing of food and supplies that lasted approximately 16 hours. And then they stopped. Stopped panicking? Stopped panicking, yes. After approximately 16 hours, the purchasing surges leveled off. The streets, which had briefly been congested, cleared. The ambient noise from their cities returned to near normal levels. We are detecting large gatherings in what they call public parks. There appear to be in several of their major cities what their communication networks are calling 'We Are Not Surrendering' festivals." Vorn Hale stared at her. "Festivals? With music?" He let that sit in the air for a moment. "They are throwing parties. Outdoor concerts, specifically. Their largest city, which they call, and I want to be precise here, New York, currently has an estimated 2.4 million humans gathered in a park listening to live musical performances, holding signs, and according to our audio captures, eating something called barbecue." Rethkova paused. "They are also selling merchandise. There are t-shirts. What do the t-shirts say?" She hesitated. He could tell she did not want to answer this question. "They say various things, Grand Strategist. Some say not today, some say day 6 and still standing." "The most popular one?" She paused again, longer this time. "The most popular one has an image of our ship on it, and beneath the ship it says, in very large letters, 'Is that all you got?'" The war chamber was very quiet. Someone near the back of the room made a sound that might have been a cough and might have been a laugh. Hale chose not to identify the source. He walked slowly to his command chair and sat down with the deliberate care of a being who was reassessing several foundational beliefs about the nature of the universe. Put through a full intelligence summary, he said. Everything, every communication intercept, every visual observation, every data point we have gathered on the human response since hour 1 of day 1. I want to understand what we are dealing with. What followed was 3 hours of briefings that Hale would later describe in his private journals as the most educational and profoundly disturbing afternoon of my military career. The human government responses had been, to put it generously, varied. The large federation they called the United States had convened an emergency session of something called Congress, which had then spent approximately 6 hours arguing about parliamentary procedure before passing a resolution that said in official terms that they did not recognize the legitimacy of the ultimatum. This was accompanied by a press conference in which their top military officer, a woman named General Petra Solov, stood in front of cameras and said, with the calm, flat affect of someone ordering lunch, "We have been given 7 days to surrender. We will not be surrendering. Any questions?" The questions had lasted 2 hours. None of them were from alien diplomats. The nation called Russia had released a single statement through their state news agency. It read, in its entirety, "We have faced worse. We are fine," and then, apparently, they had gone back to doing whatever they were doing before. A country called Nigeria had released a statement that was 4 pages long. Eloquent, poetic, historically grounded, and ended with a paragraph that Rethkova read aloud with visible discomfort. "We have survived empires, plagues, exploitation, and the particular cruelty of our own species. We have danced at the edge of our own extinction, and we have come back singing. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, understand this clearly. We have not come this far, through this much, to fill out your forms." There was again a long silence in the war chamber. "The country called Japan," Rethkova continued, "has said nothing publicly. However, our intelligence suggests they have been running continuous military drills for the past 5 days and their manufacturing sector has shifted to, quote, emergency wartime production. We are not certain what they are manufacturing. The satellite thermal signatures suggest it is significant and it is fast." "How fast?" "Very fast, Grand Strategist. Whatever their industrial apparatus is doing, it has not slowed since hour 3 of day 1. She set down her data pad. "In fact, it has accelerated every 12 hours. Hale looked at the planet again. It sat there below him, blue and green and unhurried, spinning at exactly the pace it had always spun. Unimpressed, unbothered, completely maddeningly, terrifyingly composed. He had studied conquest. He had studied psychology. He had studied 52 different civilizations across 400 years of recorded collective history, and he knew the playbook. You show overwhelming force, you give a deadline, you let the psychological weight of inevitability do the work for you. By day 3, the species was begging. By day 5, they were signing. By day 7, it was over. The humans were on day 6. They were playing music. "Sir," said his tactical officer, Drev Malak, quietly. Drev Malak was a being who had never, in 20 years of service, spoken unless he had something critical to say. So when he spoke, Hale listened. "I have been reviewing historical records, specifically human historical records, the ones we pulled from their global data network in the first 12 hours. And," Drev Malak looked down at his console, then back up. "Grand Strategist, I need you to understand something. This species has been at war with itself, continuously, for the entirety of its recorded history. They have never, not once, achieved a period of more than 40 years without a major armed conflict somewhere on the planet. They have used chemical weapons on their own kind. They have dropped nuclear devices on each other's cities. They once fought a war that lasted 100 years. He paused. "There is also one that lasted 9 days. The point is the variety." "What is your point, Drev Malak?" The tactical officer folded his hands on the console. "My point, sir, is that we looked at this species and saw a divided, fractious, self-destructive civilization. We calculated that faced with a common external threat, the political divisions would cause paralysis, that they would spend their 7 days arguing with each other instead of preparing." He turned the console to face Hale. On the screen was a graph. That calculation was wrong. The graph showed a single line. It represented what their instruments called human social cohesion. It had been trending downward for decades. Arguments, divisions, political fractures measured in 1,000 different ways. The line had reversed, sharply and completely, approximately 3 hours after the first transmission. "They stopped fighting each other," Drev Malak said. "The moment we appeared, they stopped fighting each other. Not officially, not through treaties or agreements, they just stopped. Old conflicts went quiet. Political opponents issued joint statements. Their global communication network, which had been a constant stream of internal hostility, shifted. Not to fear. He paused one more time, and for the first time in 20 years, Vorn Hale heard something in his tactical officer's voice that sounded like genuine unease. To something else. To what? Drev Malik looked at the planet. To interest. The silence in the war chamber this time was different from the previous silences. It was the silence of 40 professionals who had just realized, collectively and simultaneously, that they might have made a serious miscalculation. Outside the window, Earth kept spinning. Somewhere down there in a park in a city called New York, 2.4 million humans were eating barbecue and wearing t-shirts and waiting, with what appeared to be genuine curiosity, to see what happened next. And on day 7, something did. Day 7 arrived the way all terrible days arrive, quietly, without fanfare, wearing the unremarkable face of an ordinary morning. Vorn Hale had not slept, not because sleep was beyond him, but because every time he closed his eyes he saw that graph, the one with the line that had reversed. He had spent the night reviewing intelligence reports, cross-referencing behavioral models, and doing the thing that commanders were never supposed to do, which was second-guessing a plan that was already in motion. The ultimatum expired at 600 hours, ship time. He had the timestamp on his command display, counting down in red numerals. As of 0545, the humans had still not transmitted anything. No surrender, no request for negotiation, no desperate final-hour communication from any of their governments. Nothing. Rathkova appeared at his side at 0552, carrying 2 datapads and the specific expression of someone who had been awake all night and had found things they were not entirely comfortable having found. Grand strategist, she said. New developments. How new? Very new. As of 2 hours ago. She handed him the first pad. Japan. He looked at the display. The thermal imaging from their low-orbit sensors showed the island nation in extraordinary detail, and what it showed made the base of his secondary nerve cluster do that prickling thing again, significantly worse than before. The manufacturing surge Rathkova had flagged the previous day had not been weapons production in any conventional sense. It had been components, pieces of something larger, assembled in dozens of facilities simultaneously, loaded onto transport vehicles, and moved to dispersed locations across the country and, based on cross-referencing with other regional satellite data, distributed to partners internationally. "What are those?" he asked, pointing to a cluster of objects that the imaging was struggling to resolve clearly. "We are not certain," Rathkova said. "Our best analysis suggests they are some kind of orbital delivery system, modified civilian launch architecture, repurposed very, very quickly." She paused. "They built them in 5 days. That is not possible." "And yet," she said, with the gentle tone of someone who had also told themselves that several times already. "There they are." He handed the pad back and she gave him the second one. "This is from the American military installation in the Nevada desert. The one they call Area 51, which is funny for reasons I will explain another time. In the last 48 hours, it has gone from standard elevated activity to something our instruments classify as a significant energy signature. Consistent with weapons testing, but nothing in our known catalog of human technology matches the profile." Vorn Hale looked up from the pad. "Meaning? Meaning they built something we do not recognize." He set the pad down very carefully on the arm of his command chair. Then he stood up and walked back to the observation window and looked at the planet again. It was 0558, 2 minutes to deadline. Down there, it was probably early morning in some places, evening in others, the full spread of a world living its ordinary life. He could see the curve of the Terminator line, the soft boundary between the lit side and the dark, and he thought, not for the first time, about what it must be like to live on a planet that size and look up and see 47 warships hanging over your head like a collection of very large, very threatening chandeliers. He had expected fear. He had planned around fear. He had not planned around this. "Sir," said Drev Malak. His voice was very controlled. "Incoming transmission. From the surface." Vorn Hale turned around. "Origin. Multiple simultaneous sources. It is being broadcast from every major governmental communication center on the planet. It appears to be coordinated." Drev Malak looked up from his console. "They waited until 2 minutes before the deadline, on purpose." Of course they did, Vorn Hale thought. Of course they did. Because this species did nothing by accident and everything for effect. "Put it on screen," he said. The main display, which dominated the forward wall of the war chamber and had previously shown nothing but strategic maps and sensor data, flickered and resolved into a video feed. A single person sat at a plain table in front of a plain background. No flags, no ceremony, no theatrical backdrop of military might. Just a table, a chair, and a human being. She appeared to be somewhere in her 50s, with gray hair cut short, dark skin, and the kind of face that had clearly lived through a considerable number of events and had not been particularly softened by any of them. She wore a plain dark jacket with no insignia. She had no notes in front of her. She looked directly into the camera with the unhurried calm of someone who had prepared exactly one thing to say and intended to say it precisely. A subtitle appeared at the bottom of the screen. The human translation systems they had installed during surveillance provided her name: Dr. Amara Osei, Special Representative, Unified Earth Council. She had not existed in any political record 6 days ago, which meant they had created the Unified Earth Council in 6 days. Vorn Hale felt the prickling sensation again. He was beginning to think of it as his body's way of saying, "Pay attention, something important is happening." Dr. Osei spoke. Her voice was even and unhurried. The translation came through in clean, clipped tones. "To the fleet currently positioned in Earth orbit. This is the official and final response of the people of Earth to the ultimatum issued 6 days, 23 hours, and 54 minutes ago." She paused for exactly 1 second. No, she let that sit. She was very good at letting things sit. "We will not be surrendering. We will not be submitting terms. We will not be acknowledging the authority of the Supreme Collective over our planet, our people, our skies, or our Tuesday afternoons." Another pause. "In the 6 days since your ultimatum, we have done several things you should know about before you make your next decision. We have moved our critical civilian and governmental infrastructure to hardened and distributed positions that are not visible from orbit. We have activated industrial and manufacturing protocols that have produced, to date, 11,047 units of a weapons system we are calling the Holdout Array, which is currently positioned at 312 locations across the planet and in low orbit. We have established a joint military command structure representing every nation on Earth, and we have had, in all honesty, some very good concerts." Someone in the war chamber made that sound again, the one that could not quite decide if it was a cough or a laugh. This time Vorn Hale was fairly certain he knew who it was, and he decided to address it later. "We are not naive," Dr. Osei continued. "We know what your fleet is capable of. We have spent 6 days reading every intercept we could pull from your communication channels, running every analysis our best minds could produce, and working very hard to understand your technology and your tactics." Her expression did not change, but something behind her eyes shifted in a way that Vorn Hale found difficult to categorize. "We also know something about ourselves that you may not have fully accounted for. We are, as a species, extraordinarily bad at giving up. We have tried it a few times throughout our history. We are not good at it. It does not agree with us." She folded her hands on the table. "This is not a negotiation. This is not a counter-offer. This is information. If you choose to proceed with military action, we will defend ourselves with everything we have, and when that runs out, we will improvise. We are, if nothing else, creative under pressure." She unfolded her hands. "If you choose instead to withdraw and seek actual dialogue through appropriate diplomatic channels, we are willing to have that conversation. We are not unreasonable people. We are simply not surrendering people." She looked directly into the camera one final time. "You have our answer. Whatever you decide next is up to you." The screen went blank. The war chamber was so quiet that Vorn Hale could hear the ambient hum of the ship's gravity systems and the very small sound of someone somewhere behind him, exhaling slowly through their teeth. He stood in front of the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to face his staff. 12 officers from 12 worlds. Every one of them was looking at him with the kind of careful, neutral expression that experienced military professionals wear when they are waiting to see which way their commanding officer is going to fall before they pick a direction themselves. "Tactical assessment," he said. Drev Malik. Drev Malik pulled up the relevant data without hesitation because he had clearly been preparing for this question. "The holdout array units they referenced are an unknown quantity. Our instruments have been tracking the dispersal over the past 6 days, but we have not been able to get a clean read on their output capacity. What we do know is that their positioning suggests a coordinated strike capability targeting orbital assets." He paused. "Meaning us. The Nevada signature?" "Still unresolved. Whatever it is, it has been charged and ready for the past 18 hours. The Japanese orbital delivery systems? Ready for launch. We estimate a 15-minute window from initiation to deployment in our operational altitude." Vorn Hale nodded slowly. He looked around the room. He looked at the blank screen. He looked at the observation window and the planet beyond it. Sitting there in the comfortable indifference of a world that had made its decision and was waiting to see if he had made his, he thought about the 437 years of conquest, the 52 civilizations, the system that had never failed. He thought about a graph with a line that had reversed. He thought about 2.4 million people eating barbecue in a park and wearing t-shirts that said, "Is that all you got?" He thought about Dr. Amara Osei, who had sat at a plain table with no notes, spoken for approximately 4 minutes, and managed with remarkable economy of language to inform a 47-ship armada that they had miscalculated. He thought about what it meant that this species, this self-destructive, fractious, historically violent, perpetually arguing species, had received the most powerful ultimatum in the known galaxy, and had spent 6 days not screaming, not begging, not fracturing apart in panic, but quietly, methodically, creatively getting ready. He sat down in his command chair. "Rethkova," he said, "draft a communication to Supreme Collective Command." She was already at her console. "Contents, Grand Strategist?" He looked at the planet one last time. Still blue, still green, still spinning at the exact same pace it had always spun, completely unbothered by the 47 warships hanging over it like the universe's most unwelcome houseguests. "Tell them," he said, "that we require additional strategic assessment time before proceeding. Tell them the situation is more complex than preliminary intelligence indicated." He paused. "Tell them also to pull the behavioral profiles for this species and review them, specifically the sections covering their response to adversity, their industrial mobilization capacity, and," he paused once more because some things deserved a pause, "their history of not losing conflicts they had no rational business surviving." Rethkova's fingers moved across the console. "And the fleet, sir. Current orders? Hold position," he said, "and someone turn off the weapons lock." Nobody moved for a moment. Then Drev Malek, quietly, reached over and switched off the targeting systems. One by one, the red indicators across the tactical display went dark. The unbroken Dominion sat in orbit and did nothing. 37,000 crew members on 47 ships held their positions and waited, in the particular suspended state of a military force that had arrived expecting one kind of day and gotten a completely different one. Below them, Earth kept turning. Several hours later, one of the junior intelligence officers came to Rethkova with a fresh intercept from the human communication networks. The humans had been monitoring the fleet's power signatures, apparently because they had very good instruments of their own, and they had noticed the weapons lock disengaging. The response had been immediate, within 40 minutes of the targeting systems going dark. Dr. Amara Osei had appeared again on the broadcast frequencies. She had said 4 words. Rethkova brought the intercept to Vornhale personally. She handed it to him without commentary because she had learned, in 6 days, that this species was often best appreciated without additional interpretation. He read it. The 4 words were, "Good, talk to us." He set the intercept down on the arm of his command chair. He looked at the planet. He thought about 52 civilizations and 437 years and a system that had always worked, and one blue-green world that had looked at that system and decided collectively and cheerfully that it did not apply to them. Then, for the first time in 6 days, Vornheil did something he had not anticipated doing at any point during this mission. He smiled. "Rethkova," he said, "open a channel."